The asphalt beyond Albuquerque still shimmered from last night's rain when Ryan, Carter, and Evan Hale merged onto Highway 60, heading west. It was July 17, 2011, the start of a week-long road trip that was supposed to end at the Grand Canyon. They were 23 and 24, college roommates who had graduated the same spring. Ryan carried a Nikon camera and a notebook filled with quotes. Evan drove his father's silver Jeep Cherokee, a dent on the rear bumper from backing into a mailbox. Their plan was loose: sleep in the car, camp when they could, stop anywhere that looked like a story. At 8:43 a.m., a gas station camera in Socorro caught them buying coffee and ice. Evan held the door open for Ryan, joking to the clerk, "We're chasing sunsets." The receipt timestamp was the last verified record of their trip. They were reported missing 5 days later, when neither answered texts or showed up at Evan's sister's house in Flagstaff. Searchers found almost nothing. A park ranger near the San Mateo Mountains remembered a silver SUV taking a back road cutoff toward the river basin. Beyond that road was wilderness, canyons carved by flash floods, no cell towers, no houses. On the 6th day, helicopters combed the area, and ground crews followed faint tire marks that ended in sand. They located a patch of broken brush and a plastic water jug, but no sign of the Jeep or the men. The search was suspended after 10 days. For years, the families lived in parallel grief. Ryan's mother mailed flyers to radio stations every anniversary. Evan's father kept the title of the Jeep active, paying registration in case he just pulls in one day. Each family kept one shared object of their son's: a spare set of keys from an old copy Ryan had made for their dorm apartment. On the fob was a plastic charm shaped like a compass. The arrow had long ago snapped off. A bow hunter named Clint Ramos trekked the dry riverbed of the San Mateo drainage after a storm. The water had peeled back layers of silt, revealing a new channel glittering with bits of quartz. Near a fallen cottonwood root, his boot struck metal. He bent down and brushed away sand until a small keyring emerged. 5 keys, fused together by rust. Hanging from it was a melted plastic compass charm. Clint turned it over. The imprint on the Jeep key read Chrysler. He took a photo, sent it to his brother, who forwarded it to a local deputy. Within hours, the sheriff's office matched the tag number, stamped on the fob, to an active missing persons entry. Hale, Evan, vehicle 2011 Jeep Cherokee, silver. A search unit returned to the site the next morning. They widened the dig around the tree root and soon unearthed a bent license plate, half buried in silt. AZ-B92LNK, the Jeep's number. For 12 years, floods had buried the vehicle under alternating layers of sand and gravel. The hunter had unknowingly stepped onto the roof. When excavators peeled back the riverbed, the top of a crushed SUV appeared, windshield shattered, doors packed tight with mud. Inside the cab were fragments of a backpack, 2 cameras, and a single notebook swollen with water. No remains, just traces. Deputy Marla Keene, now in her 50s, had been a rookie during the original search. She stood by the trench and whispered, "They never left. The mountain just waited." In the evidence tent, technicians cataloged everything. On the dashboard sat a corroded GPS unit. After drying the circuit board, they extracted partial data logs showing a route diverted from Highway 60 southward. Following a trail called Cibola Cutoff, a dirt road closed to the public after monsoon washouts that same summer. The last recorded coordinate stopped at lat 33.373/lon -107.406. A low crossing where the river bends around basalt cliffs. That's where the flood had torn through. Forensics suggested the Jeep was caught mid-crossing when the water rose. Silt inside the wheel wells dated to 2011. When the families were notified, they met at the sheriff's office together for the first time in years. The investigator placed the rusted key ring on the table between them. Ryan's mother covered it with her hands, tears smearing dust onto the metal. Evan's father whispered. He always kept the compass charm, said it pointed home, even if it didn't work. They asked to see the recovered notebook. Inside, only a few words were legible, the rest washed to gray. On one page, Ryan had written, Day 3, camped near Bend, water low, good light for photos. Evan says thunder means it's moving east. The next line bled away completely, except for 3 surviving letters, sauce. By mid-November, the sheriff's office organized a controlled drainage to recover the Jeep fully. Cameras filmed the lift as mud cascaded from its frame. When they opened the back hatch, a plastic food container floated out still sealed. Inside were 2 unspoiled rolls of 35mm film in waterproof canisters. At the lab, technicians developed both. Most frames were washed blank, but 2 survived. The first showing the Jeep parked beside a shallow creek, Ryan crouched with his camera, Evan laughing, arm raised as if signaling something. The second, a blurred image of water streaking white over headlights. The timestamp on the final exposure, July 17, 2011, 6:22 p.m. News outlets called it the Keys in the River mystery. Clint, the hunter, refused interviews, saying only, I think they were trying to come home. For investigators, the puzzle was simple physics: rain upstream, flash flood, misjudged crossing. For the families, it was grace. The river had kept what it took until it could give it back. A sheriff boxed the keys in a display case for evidence release. When Evan's father picked it up, he turned the compass charm slowly until the cracked arrow caught the afternoon sun. It glinted toward the west, the direction they'd been heading 12 years earlier. He smiled faintly and said, Guess it still points home. The Jeep sat beneath floodlights at the county impound lot, its metal skin dulled by 12 years of river sand. For investigators, it wasn't just evidence, it was a time capsule sealed by mud and patience. Technicians wore gloves and headlamps as they worked. The air smelled of clay and engine oil. They peeled away layers of silt like archaeologists uncovering an ancient wreck. The frame had folded inward from water pressure. The front axle snapped clean. But what drew the most attention wasn't structural. It was personal. On the passenger side floor, they found a pair of sunglasses, lenses still intact, and a waterproof camera bag with a faded sticker that read, See more than the map shows. Inside was a small digital camera, its screen shattered, but memory card unbroken. The forensics team extracted the card and ran a data recovery. 271 photos appeared, time-stamped from July 14th to July 17th, 2011. The missing days. The first sequence showed desert highways, motel parking lots, and gas stations. The men looked tired, but carefree. The last dozen shots recorded a landscape slowly darkening, thicker clouds, flashes of distant lightning, and finally, the interior of the Jeep lit by dashboard glow. One image showed the steering wheel tilted hard right, rain blurring the windshield. Forensics estimated the flood hit just before 6:25 p.m., matching the timestamp on the film. With upstream rainfall exceeding 6 inches per hour, the narrow canyon would have become a trap in minutes. Investigators concluded the men tried to reverse. The engine stalled, and the current flipped the Jeep sideways, wedging it beneath the overhang, where it remained entombed for over a decade. No human remains survived, just fragments of bone too small for certainty. DNA testing returned inconclusive. The families accepted the likelihood that the river had taken them both. Detective Marla Keene drafted the final report, but she hesitated before signing. He wasn't running from the storm, he was photographing it. When the story broke nationally, the photos spread everywhere. Viewers fixated on the last clear image of the men together. Ryan leaning out of the Jeep window, Evan grinning into the lens. It became a symbol of youth suspended in time, a frozen second before disaster. The hunter, Clint Ramos, returned quietly to the site weeks later. He walked along the riverbed where the Jeep had been excavated. The hole was already half filled by new sediment. A single key from the recovered ring had slipped back into the mud, lost again. He left it there deliberately, saying to himself, "One should stay." A recovered notebook drew its own fascination. Water damage had erased most of the ink, but technicians used spectral filters to lift faint handwriting invisible for the eye. Between smears and ripples, two legible lines emerged. "The road stops where the river starts. If it comes fast, climb." They believed it was Ryan writing a note for anyone who might find the car later. The word climb appeared twice, pressed deep, as if written in panic or determination. Marla printed that page and framed it in her office. "He tried to tell us something," she said. "Maybe he wanted the warning to survive, even if they didn't." By January 2024, the case was formally closed. The Jeep's chassis was sent to a museum in Santa Fe as part of an exhibit on Southwestern disappearances. The two recovered cameras and notebook remained at the state archive. Ryan's mother visited the exhibit opening. She stood before the display case containing the keys and whispered, "He would have loved the light in here." Evan's father rested his hand on the glass and said, "Now everybody knows where they went." 6 months later, monsoon season returned to New Mexico. One storm in particular resembled the one from 2011, sudden, fierce, and loud. Flood sirens wailed across Socorro County as creeks overflowed. The same river that had buried the Jeep broke its banks again, reshaping the channel. When the water receded, volunteers found debris scattered along the floodplain: branches, tires, bottles. Among them was a small metallic object glinting in the mud. It was a car key, bent nearly in half, attached to a rusted ring. A ranger recognized the emblem immediately. They called Marla. She arrived within the hour, raincoat still dripping, and stood, staring at the key as if time had folded on itself. "This river doesn't forget," she murmured. She placed the key in her pocket, intending to log it as redundant evidence. But later that night, she left it on the memorial stone near the bend. The memorial had been installed earlier that spring. A simple granite marker with two names etched side: Ryan Carter, 1988 to 2011, Evan Hale, 1987 to 2011. "The road stops where the river starts." Visitors left pebbles and faded Polaroids on top. Some hikers claimed they could still hear faint clicking at night, like a camera shutter echoing over the canyon when wind blew through the cottonwoods. Locals said it was just rocks settling. Others weren't so sure. For Ryan's mother, the noise was comfort. "If it's them," she told a reporter, "then they're still taking pictures. That's what they loved most." Late that summer, the Park Service built a new wooden footbridge over the section where the Jeep was found. They named it Carter Hale Crossing. A plaque underneath read, "Discovered 2023, dedicated to those who travel light and look deeper." On the morning of the dedication, Marla stood on the bridge alone before the ceremony began. The sky was clear, except for one narrow cloud that stretched west, the same direction the men had been heading. She looked down into the shallow water, clear enough now to see the smooth river stones beneath. Something silver flashed between them. She crouched, reached into the cold water, and lifted a small metal charm, the broken plastic compass, its arrow, long gone. Sunlight hit the water and reflected up her arm. For a moment, she swore the arrow reappeared, pointing east this time, toward home. She laughed quietly. "You found your way," she said. Then she set it back into the current and watched as it drifted downstream, catching light all the way until it vanished behind the next bend. By nightfall, the ceremony began. Locals lit candles along the bridge railings. Families, rangers, and travelers passing through stood in silence as the last candle flickered in the breeze. Above them, thunder rumbled far away, not menacing, just familiar. The river shimmered with candlelight, and for one breath, the reflection of two young men seemed to move through it, side by side, just as the last photo had captured them. The wind shifted, carrying the faintest metallic sound, like keys clinking together underwater. By early spring of 2025, the floodplain near the San Mateo Mountains had gone quiet again. Wild grass grew over the excavation scars, and the bridge named Carter Hale Crossing blended naturally into the landscape. The river still whispered when wind brushed through the canyon. For most who visited, it was just another stop on a hiking map. But for the families, it was sacred ground. The case files were closed, the photographs archived, yet the story refused to fade. A small true crime filmmaker from Santa Fe released a short documentary titled Keys in the River. Within a month, it spread across social media. Millions of views, thousands of comments, people leaving digital candles under the thumbnail. Most viewers fixated on one question: why were the two friends on that forbidden cutoff road in the first place? The film revealed a new detail. An email Ryan had sent to his photography mentor 2 days before they vanished. In it, he wrote, "We found an old route that isn't on the map anymore. There's a river where light hits the cliffs like glass. We going to chase it." Those words reframed everything. They weren't lost tourists. They were explorers following light. That spring, Ryan's mother visited the bridge for the first time since the dedication. She arrived alone, carrying a small wooden box. Inside were photo prints recovered from the digital camera, dried and laminated now. The last image of the Jeep, the blurred flood, and a few calm shots of desert mornings. She knelt beside the memorial stone and placed the box beneath it. She spoke softly, as if the canyon could hear. "Your father used to say you can't capture the sun, only what it touches. I think you proved him wrong." When she stood, she noticed something new. The water below shimmered with metallic flecks. Bits of the Jeep's frame, loosened by winter runoff, caught sunlight and reflected it back up the canyon wall. For a few seconds, the entire gorge flickered with light, like camera flashes repeating themselves. Detective Marla Keene retired that summer. Her final act before leaving the department was to transfer the remaining evidence to the state archive. But she kept one item, the copy of Ryan's note she'd framed in her office. "The road stops where the river starts. If it comes fast, climb." She hung it above her desk at home, not as a warning, but as a kind of compass. He wasn't writing about the flood, she told an interviewer later. He was talking about life. When things come fast, you climb. When the reporter asked what she thought the sound in the canyon really was, the clicking people claimed to hear at night, she smiled. Wind can sound like anything if you want it to. But maybe that's the point. Maybe they wanted to keep reminding us. By August, a memorial fund in the friends' names raised enough money to install weather-proof trail markers across remote sections of the Cibola Cutoff. Each sign bore a simple inscription: "If it comes fast, climb." Rescue statistics later showed a 30% decrease in lost hikers. The park's director called it a legacy written by those who didn't make it home. Clint Ramos, the hunter who'd first found the keys, received a letter of thanks from both families. He never replied publicly, but locals said he often parked near the bridge at dusk, sitting in his truck with the windows down, listening to the river. He told one passing ranger, "They're somewhere downstream, laughing about all this attention." In late autumn, Evan's father organized a small night vigil at the Riverbed. The temperature dropped fast after sunset, turning the air brittle. Friends and family stood along the bridge with lanterns. He held up the compass charm that had been recovered by Marla months earlier, cleaned, straightened, polished. "I carried this thing for 12 years, he said, voice cracking. It didn't point north anymore. Turns out it didn't need to. He dropped it into the water. It sank slowly, catching one glimmer of light before disappearing. The reflection shimmered back at them twice, As though another charm had fallen alongside it. People gasped quietly, but said nothing. The sound of the river filled the silence. When the last lantern flickered out, someone noticed the clicking again. Rhythmic, distant, like a camera shutter echoing through the canyon. They stood listening until it faded into the wind. Weeks later, Marla received a small parcel at her new address with no return label. Inside was a USB drive and a note typed in courier font. From the last roll of undeveloped film, found lodged in the back seat panel during restoration, museum staff. On the drive were 3 low-resolution images, likely from a disposable camera. The first showed Ryan and Evan posing by the Jeep at sunrise, faces half-lit, horizon gold. The second captured the canyon wall glowing after a storm, the river calm again. The third was nearly black, but when she brightened it, 2 faint beams of light appeared on the water's surface, side by side. Marla closed the laptop, tears filling her eyes. She whispered, "Still together." She placed the drive in a small drawer with the note and turned off the light. The next spring, the river swelled again with snowmelt. Tourists came and went, snapping photos of the bridge, unaware that beneath the stones lay the wreckage of a story the land had already told. From a distance, the sun hit the current at just the right angle. For a moment, 2 bright reflections shimmered across the surface, not constant, just enough to be seen if you were paying attention. People said it looked like the flash of a camera. The wind carried the sound of rushing water down the canyon, blending with the rustle of leaves. Some swear they heard a voice in it, 2 voices, laughing. And if you stand there long enough, you can almost imagine them still on that road in 2011, Jeep windows down, music playing, chasing a light that never stopped moving.